Hello, everybody, and welcome to our stroll through the Bible study on the book of Deuteronomy. We come to the third day of looking at Deuteronomy as we look at Deuteronomy chapter 5 and just a little bit into verse 6, the first three verses of verse 6. This is a speech that Moses gives. Our last speech gave a summary of pretty much the journey and reminded the people when they go into this land they are going to inherit, they must keep these laws in their hearts and they must let it transform their lives. And if so, they can keep the land, which of course, the thing about it is, spoiler alert, it doesn't work, but that's for later. Now in chapter 5, we get a remembering of the Ten Commandments. Now, people can make a lot about how the Ten Commandments sounds a bit different here than it did in Leviticus, which sounded different. There's little tiny differences, probably chalked up to the oral tradition of the Ten Commandments than they sounded in Exodus. Each one has its own unique flavor, as well as being very much the same thing. So you can tell that, it's kind of like different, almost like a different people were to, obviously if we memorize the same wording of something, we'd repeat the same things, but it's not like anything substantial changes. The one thing that is interesting here is that the way Deuteronomy presents the story, Moses stood between the people and God spoke the 10 words. The 10 commandments, the 10 rules to the people. And Moses was just kind of there on the side. So the people, not these people, remember, these are the children of the people. Now granted, maybe they were kids or whatever during that time, but the way the speech is, you didn't hear this, but your ancestors did. In fact, this covenant now, and this is part of this innovation we were talking about, this covenant wasn't actually for everybody who was there. The covenant was only for those who actually followed it. And so if you remember, and of course, the early chapters 1 through 4 reminded us that they were rebellions, and the people who rebelled lost their right to inherit the promised land and to inherit the promises of God. And so you, the reader, the listener, are the descendants of the people for whom God made this covenant, and you are descendants of the people who kept the covenant. And so the Ten Commandments is remembered. And after the Ten Commandments is remembered, then we get another version of the story where the people said, we're just not, and again, this is a little different. In Exodus, the people were just scared. They're like, we do not want to deal this. Deuteronomy's take on the story is a little bit more nuanced. If we stand before God and we're not super serious, we will die, because God means business, and we don't want to risk it. It's a little different than we're afraid of God. Please, Moses, go talk to him. It's more of this is your job, Moses. Please do this. Take this seriously, because I think if we all get together, it's almost like acknowledging when you get all of us together, somebody is going to do something stupid, and God's going to have to kill us. God and Moses both agree, and Moses congratulates the people for their insight. God even says, these are good people, and if they keep thinking this way, they're going to keep the promised land when they get there. And so the story kind of teaches us who we want to be. We want to be humble people who take very seriously our role as receiving God's promises and God's word, which is a mighty and awesome thing, but it is also a terrifying and awesome thing. And with that, Moses reiterates these words, this word you have heard, keep this and live. Your life will be long and your time in the land will be prosperous. Adding again this moral aspect to the covenant. The covenant isn't just God is going to agree with you no matter what. Many times in of course modern settings, as you get further and further into away from the biblical times, all interpretations become kind of scary. But many times I've heard people referring to church decisions or church people or perhaps the modern state of Israel, and they say, you can't question what they're doing because they're God's anointed. They're God's chosen. And really, honestly, if you read Leviticus, or if you, Leviticus and Numbers so far, that's perfectly fine, right? Because I mean, that seems to be the idea, especially there in Numbers, where we saw, the people were pretty mediocre, but whenever the other king wanted Balaam to curse them, Balaam was like, I can't. But Deuteronomy adds this new hitch. And the hitch is this: no, by being people of God, they're actually more susceptible to being critiqued and criticized. Now, not by us per se, but by God. Because since you have taken the responsibility of the law, you now have a responsibility to live by it. To borrow the great line from Spider-Man, from Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's where chapter 6, where we leave off here at chapter 6. We'll pick back up in chapter 6 and go through chapter 8 in our next video. Thank you for being with me. I hope these cold winter days are good for you. I guess I've now just sort of forced the whenever you watch it, if you watch it in spring, whatever, but are good to you. Thank you. Like and share our videos as always. Subscribe to our channel. And God bless.